right, so here's the 550 all taken apart, engine out. And after using it a little, I think I want to move this ground wire just to another side of the box, because what the hell does it matter? It grounds on any side. There's an old cooling line. Can you see it? That old cooling line, that's the old 1/4-inch cooling line, and I don't think it goes anywhere out the back. I freaking forget. Issues noted. My usual grease mess, but I think that's standard. Of course, I talked about this in an earlier video that my coupler cover broke. I have a replacement. I need to notch it to fit around my bilge pump. That eliminates a bolt hole. So I need to maybe notch it a little more accurately and maintain that mounting point so it doesn't flex so bad. I gotta glue these back on. That happens all the time, but it looks like I need to clean the hole up anyway. And when I put on the sponsons, all the little screws poke through, so I'll grind those guys flush and maybe think of something nice to cover them up with. I think all I really need to do on this is just clean it this year. No real modifications. Oh, I thought of one. Showtime Freestyle sells a bracket. That way there's no flex here. And this doesn't really flex, and I have a spare manifold in case the worst should happen, but it's always nice to mount it top and bottom. So just to finish up on the 550, I'll put back together now. I have a issue with this front resonator. It sits in there fine. It's got to be shoved all the way up front. This is in a proper location. I measured a couple 550s, and I have enough hose in there, but boy, that alignment is bad. I need to figure something else out. Might end up going back to the stock water box anyway. This thing is loud, like needlessly loud, and I'll show you. I'm having to route my water lines differently than I would want to. I'm actually using kind of stock water line routing. It's got 2 3/8 lines coming into the exhaust manifold. So I've got 2 3/8 lines coming out at the cylinder head, and this one normally would dump to a bypass, but the resonator has an inlet so I can spray water in it to silence it and cool it. So this one dumps straight off the head, and then this one, what dumps off the head, feeds the pipe as well. Normally I only feed the pipe half as much water, but I'm trying to get as much down into the stinger to put it out the muffler as possible. So I'm feeding the pipe full water coming out of here, going into the stinger. This is only here, and it's restricted in the end, just so I have a visual indication that I got cooling water at least through the head pipe. Looking down there, I got all the sponson screws ground down and flush with the fiberglass, and then I just put big blobs of silicone on there. You see in the light, that green cap? That's that 1/4-inch water line I referenced earlier. I got that cut back all the way to the bulkhead, and then I capped it because it looks cool. The coupler guard, or the coupling cover, that came out fine, polished it up nicely. Problem was, remember I talked about that notch on this side here that I had to cut to get around the bilge pump? Well, the bearing housing had also been notched to get around that bilge pump, and it weakened the mount. So when I started tightening that screw, it went pop-o. So now, not true. As much as I fought to get another screw or bolt up there, broke it anyway. Don't have one. So we'll need to come up with a new solution. This is a 440 fuel filter bracket. The 550 has a rev limiter mount right there. This is the 440 piece. It just looks a lot nicer. I mentioned Showtime Freestyle makes that carb bracket. And then you can see I finished off with the Pro Watercraft hull extensions to match the ride plate and nozzle. So that's it for the 550. Fuel line's been all drained out. It's already been ceramic coated. Aside from sorting out the muffling issue and putting on about 40 zip ties, she's ready to go. Hi. Just like that, 2 months went by. The 550 project got completed, and then I'm starting on the 440 project this year, and I got a lot to talk about, so I'll show you that in a minute. water box is rubbing a hole in the rubber pad up there, but that's because I'm using a straight tube, and then the West Coast pipe is a straight tube, so I'm hoping the change to a Kaufman's might angle it a little better. The same mess as usual. See the grease coming out around the seals here, but that's not water, so that's good. It means I've got it full of grease. The usual mess around the bilge pump. There's the screws for my sponsons, which are kind of ugly. They don't actually hurt you in here. They're kind of out of the way, but if you spend your time with your hands down along the side, I guess, you could get caught by one. You could definitely get caught cleaning this thing, so I'm going to grind them flush. I did it on the 550 already. I'll grind them flush and then just put a little blob of silicone over each one to prevent any leaking, which shouldn't happen because there's so much silicone on the outside. But it also just gives you a soft pad in case your hand touches it. There's the engine. Fared well all season. Little fuel right there. So where are we leaking? Right around this base still. That's because of this shitty steel bracket that the original Kawasaki's used. This leaks. I've even got it sealed up with sealer and it still leaks. It's just how it goes. Show you what we got going here. This is a 1981 JS 440. My version 1.0 of this ski could be considered super stock 440 spec, although it would have been extremely mild. I'm talking low end, not competitive. As a recreational ski though, it was actually a ripper for a 440. Up top, it wasn't real crazy. These are 0-degree bars and a different billet throttle. Coming underneath, it came to me with this Mariner extended ride plate with no fins and this side loader intake grate. And it ended up being with the stock hull and these two, one of my favorite handling combinations. I since switched out for the open West Coast intake grate. I don't feel a difference in handling, which tells me that that's probably not doing as much as it could as a top loader intake grate. Here. Mine had stock cases, stock crank, stock rods, stock pistons. The head wasn't anything crazy. I'd use a copper head gasket. Head milled right down to the squish area. My intake ports, I discussed this one time in another video. All I really did on these was the bottoms. That's because this whole thing was done with budget of money and time in mind, so I was only going to do the most effective thing. And that meant just the part of the port that really needs the modification. So no air is flowing across the top. It's not open that long, so only lowered the bottoms. So you can see this when I straightened the walls, lowered it, kept the exact same radius. In the back there, you can see I way raised up that B or the A transfer inlet. That just opens up the mouth of that port. Reshaped that port a tiny bit. And then my exhaust, I raised this roof, widened it, and polished it. The porting lended to some higher RPM, but the high exhaust port led to some low compression and it was really gutless on torque. I'm seeking more power. And that led me to go look on my shelf. I've got two more 440 cylinder here. This one's stock. Got a sleeve in that cylinder. So this is a blank canvas for me. I would need to bore it the next size up because yucko. But I love 440 transfer ports. You can get a lot of air in those 440 transfer ports. This one's already bored over, but it's already ported too. Someone's worked the transfers, worked that intake. Very sexy style, very nice looking divider in there. Exhaust ports almost look like mine, except he's got this notch, and that notch is to reduce compression at low RPM. So this would be a cool cylinder, racy design. I know what to expect. The exhaust port timing is exactly like mine. That intake timing is exactly like mine. It's still just a 440, but I have one other cylinder. It's a 550. And it's been bored over, so it's actually a 536. So burr finish on those intakes. And on this cylinder, it is stock timing, but I did flatten that a whole lot, which you can see better from this angle. These are my lower intakes with about 6 hours total for both cylinders here. And what I'll do next, I haven't gotten to them, is the exhausts. I'm going to do stock timing, but we're going to widen them up. These are 40 some millimeters wide, and I can go as wide as 52. So I'm going to try a Honda NSR style. Upper transfers will not get timing modified, but I might reshape this B port back here a tiny bit and, burr finish as best I can. I might aim them up some too. Both cases have also been completely deburred. It's just a high-end detail. It shows that someone cared. Here's the cylinder head. I'm not too stoked on it. I cleaned up these chambers and, oh, God, that was less bad. Might just take these to a machinist. This seems like it's going to be fairly high compression anyway, and I'm not looking to run that much compression. That's the plans for the engine. Let me show you what we got coming up for the pump. Here's a jet pump I pulled out of it. Completely stock from the early 80s. Kawasaki wasn't even using stainless liners in them then. Bare aluminum, and boy, do I have some gouges. Well, I modified it for 1/2 inch. And I don't want to reuse this pump. This pump has become inefficient, which is probably responsible for my low 40-mile-an-hour top speeds. I do have this pump. This pump was pulled from a racing ski I owned. It's had the vane tips slightly modified. It's been slightly polished on those edges. The nozzle's been bored. It has the stainless wear liner. Good setup, right? Except this one's dual 3/8. I could probably plug that, increase that to the 1/4 inch I need, and then run the bigger fitting. Then this one would be a 1/2 inch pump. Why modify that pump when I have that pump? This is a PJS afterburner pump. These are made by PJS or assembled by PJS. It's a Kawasaki pump. In fact, it even has the somewhere on here original Kawasaki factory casting markings on it all over. They just bored out the center sections, pressed in their stainless sections. This is a stock Kawasaki outlet nozzle, and it's also been bored. And then PJS pumps all came with 1/2 inch fittings. But I also have a PJS afterburner pump from what are they, a Thunder something? Thunder Hawk? Or the Viper? So same exact thing. This one's cast though, that's not stainless steel. They cast the pump, they cast the outlet nozzle, they cast the steering nozzle. 1/2 inch water outlet. So many choices. What's a guy to do? I'm leaning towards that one. To complement it, I've got a 17 and a 16. You can't see through the plastic. Pitch impeller, both PJS. And the boat already has a Solus 1419 variable pitch on it. That'll be the one I start with. I know that'll run with real high horsepower, high RPM, but it'll also work on this 440. Other stuff that really didn't make it on video, Haley and I put on these sponsons. I got the longer ones. These are race legal and just a different design. I didn't want to have two of the same thing. I decided I'm going to paint the bottom in here with Total Boat bilge coat. So got all my screw heads from the sponsons ground down. I don't think I need to do silicone on here if I'm going to do the epoxy coat. I did silicone on the 550 though. I will go around here, clean up all the glue edges, and I'm going to use just a little bit of epoxy in the corners there to tidy it all up. The bilge coat wants you to do a 120 finish. So it's sanded all the way down to right there because this thing's in my way. Once I get that out, I've got a bearing rebuild kit going in it. I've got a bulkhead brace I'm going to put on it. I've got twin Mikuni 38s for it. We go into a dual carb system. If you can see in there, I burr finished the manifold all the way through. I tried my hardest to find another shorty, so I found 2 taller velocity stacks. And then the last big change is I rescued this gigantic Kaufman's pipe off of eBay. Powder coating's flaking off, so do something about that. So that about catches you up. Introduce you to the 440 project that'll be going all winter long here. Got parts already coming in this week. Stay tuned for more stuff that I got going on it. It won't be done until probably the last minute. So, see ya.